The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
It's 2025, everybody. From everybody at CNBC and Squawkbox, a warm welcome to the new year to all our viewers. I'm Steve Sedgwick, and these are your headlines. 2025 kicks off, though, with the US on high alert in the wake of New Year's attack in New Orleans that killed 15 people. And just hours later, the deadly explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Well, elsewhere, let's look at the markets. Asian equities begin the new year, by and large, on the back foot, with the Hang Seng leading losses. Investors looking ahead, of course, to Donald Trump's second term in the White House and a potentially more hawkish Fed. Elsewhere, Chinese factory activity surprises yet again to the downside, with new export orders falling ahead of expected tariffs from the incoming Trump administration. And Russian gas flows to Europe via Ukraine dry up as Kyiv refuses to renew a transit deal, ending decades of dominance over the continent's energy market. Yeah, genuinely lovely to see you all this year. I hope we can have a great journey and a profitable journey for many of you. But we start the year with concerns stateside about domestic terrorism of some form of description or some way and shape and form. Law enforcement officials have told NBC the FBI is investigating whether the explosion of a Cybertruck outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas Wednesday was an act of terrorism after the blast killed the person inside the vehicle and injured 7 others. Now, Las Vegas Police Department says it is investigating whether there was any connectivity between the explosion and a terror attack in New Orleans that killed at least 15 people. NBC's Morgan Chesky filed this report.
That's right, we are. In fact, 3 law enforcement officials briefed on this matter say it's now being investigated as a potential act of terrorism. All of this happening amid growing evidence that this deadly fire was not an accident. Growing questions tonight into this Tesla Cybertruck turned inferno just feet away from the Trump International Hotel. The stunning scene on the Vegas Strip, now the focus of a federal investigation. Law enforcement officials confirming the Cybertruck was rented from the same company as the vehicle used in the New Orleans attack.
We're looking for secondary devices. We're taking it slow, and we are going to make sure that we remain safe in our community.
The blaze, called in around 8:40 this morning, appeared to erupt in seconds. Witnesses describing hearing a loud noise, followed by a smoky scene.
We saw a lot of smoke through the windows.
Inside the vehicle, fire crews discovered an unidentified body. The burst of flames also wounding at least 7 bystanders before it was fully contained. Tesla founder Elon Musk posting, "The whole Tesla senior team is investigating this matter right now," adding, "We've never seen anything like this." Retired ATF agent Scott Sweeto says video evidence may be telling in the investigation.
You can see multiple large flashes, and you also hear whistling sounds in that video, and those whistling sounds are very consistent with the sort of fireworks that you could buy as a consumer and set off.
Tonight, the Trump Organization thanking law enforcement for their swift response as federal investigators dig in. Morgan Chesky, NBC News, Las Vegas.
Well, earlier tonight, Tesla CEO Elon Musk took to X to announce that the company has confirmed that the explosion was caused by, as mentioned in the package, very large fireworks and or a bomb carried in the truck's bed. Well, this in the aftermath of Wednesday's attack on New Orleans, where an Army veteran flying an ISIS flag from his truck rammed into New Year's revellers, killing 15 people and injuring around 30. The president, Joe Biden, condemned what he called a despicable act and said authorities are investigating whether there was any links with the Cybertruck explosion.
The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill, The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. The situation is very fluid, and the investigation has a preliminary stage.
Right, okay, let's get back to the bread and butter of CNBC, which is how politics, economics, business, markets, how it all melds together. I'm delighted to welcome back to the show for the first time, 2025. I hope she had a lovely New Year's. Sylvia Mara. Sylvia, more importantly than markets, how was your New Year's?
It was fantastic, and I hope you had a great one as well.
I had an interesting one.
I
can't deny.
Okay.
It ended later than I hoped for, but yes, it was an interesting year. I'll perhaps tell the viewers about it another time. It's perhaps not for a different kind of show. Anyway, you take it away on the markets.
It is a very exciting day because it is the first trading day of a new year. So I want to give you a recap so you can get started today with all of the context in mind. Looking at U.S. markets on Tuesday, we did see major indices lower on the day, but actually it is in 2024 that I want to focus our attention because performance stateside has been so strong. So let's look at the different indices stateside over the course of 2024. We had the Dow posting gains of about 13%. Thinking about the Nasdaq as well, was up almost 30%, roughly 30% on the year. And thinking about the S&P itself, look at it. We had gains above 24%. And this is particularly interesting because when you think about the S&P performance over the last 2 years, so 2023 and 2024, we saw the index posting its biggest 2-year jump since 1998. Why? Because of the big tech performance, in particular, the AI narrative. Let me also take you to the Treasury space so we understand what's happening there today. Thinking about Treasury yields, we did see some moves lower on Tuesday. However, we were talking about thinner trades as well. So important to have that context in mind. Let's see what will happen today. We will see initial jobless claims posted, so that could perhaps move some of the sentiment across the Treasury market. Thinking about the currency space, let's get a check there as well. One of the stories today continues to be one of the main stories of 2024, which was the outperformance of the US dollar. Just to give you an idea for context here, the US dollar roughly 7% across 2024. In terms of the commodity space, this is how we're moving so far today. Thinking about oil prices, they are at the moment just tracking slightly higher at this stage. Let's see how we'll fare. As I said today, it is the first trading day of 2025. So indeed, let's see how investors will continue to position themselves. In terms of what we have seen so far in the new year across the Asian equity space, this is it. It's important to keep in mind that some of the bourses there are closed today. Nonetheless, thinking about the performance of Chinese equities, they are moving lower today. We did get a little bit of weaker data as well, so that is moved some of the stocks in China. On top of that, worth keeping in mind, of course, the potential threat of tariffs is still very much in the mind of Asian investors too. And in terms of US futures, this is how we're shaping up ahead of the open on Wall Street. We are tracking slightly higher positive start to trading day on Wall Street. Let's see what will happen indeed on this first trading day of 2025, Steve.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Nadine, for that superlative summary, and more of the same throughout the year, I'm sure. Let's get to Mike Gallagher, who is Director of Research at Continuum Economics. Mike, I used to, as a trader, it was a long time ago now, over a quarter century ago, I used to quite like the challenge of the first trading day of the year. You know, it tends to be, and it's not everyone's runs different books, but it tends to be P&L back to zero on the 1st of January. You have the reset, you've made your money last year, or you've lost your money last year, it's a reset. Very exciting time. You can actually refresh your portfolio, refresh your ideas, and that's kind of what I want to hear from you today. Well, what would you do? Some trades worked last year, some trades didn't work. What's the greatest refresh idea for this year?
So I think you've got to sort of look at it as two halves for 2025.
Yeah.
The first half is going to be the same as 2024 in terms of US exceptionalism. You are going to get some policy announcements from the new Trump administration in the second half of January, which will help market sentiment. And so the market can probably sort of reach 6,200, 6,300 for the S&P 500 in the first half of the year. So it's that same sort of dominant story. I think the problem is that the second half is going to be a lot trickier, a lot more difficult, because the thing that the Trump administration will do is likely expand the size of the budget deficit, and that points to bond yields, 10-year bond yields, eventually going to 5%.
Okay.
And that's actually, it's just too tough for the equity market at current valuations in the US.
Brilliant. Well, look, you have the honour, or the kind of the eye-rolling dubious honour, of you're the first person I'll challenge of 2025, and you've had plenty of those over the years also, you know what's coming next. It's like, if everybody thinks that it's like you, and I think there's a lot of people who think that the S&P is going to go north of 6,000, that things are as they were, and then we get trickier in the second half of the year. Why is the market not going to act as a forward-looking indicator, stroke instrument, and actually do all of that doom and gloom in the first half of the year?
Because I think we get some Fed easing, first of all, that helps kind of keep the sentiment positive. I think, secondly, the bond market will react to when supply is coming, rather than the tax cuts, which will be sort of announced in the first half of the year. You've also got, Bessent, the incoming US Treasury Secretary, that's claiming that he wants to get the budget deficit down to 3%. In reality,
do you believe that? So with respect to Mr. Bessent, and to respect to Doge, Ramaswamy, and Musk, and I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe a word of the US going back to a 3% deficit. I didn't believe it under the Democrats, and I don't believe it under the Republicans.
I would agree with what you're saying. However, in the first half of the year, there'll be some hope that maybe they can stabilise the budget deficit. 3% is very, very ambitious. The reality, however, by the second half is likely that we'll be facing an 8% budget deficit in 2026, and an increase in US government bonds being issued. And really, at the end of the day, that's going to push bond yields higher, and it's going to be the driving force for all markets.
Yeah. Why do you believe that the Fed can still... here you go. I've got a guest on later, Thanos Papasavas, 8 o'clock London time. And he's kind of stuck in some ideas. He likes to be a little bit contrarian here and there. And I don't think he's that contrarian that he actually thinks the Fed could be hiking rates in 2025. It's not a million miles away from where the market's come from. The market's had a sobering end of 2024 where the Fed's not been quite as acquiescent as it hoped it would be. Now, I don't know what the chance of the number of cuts this year is. It's down to about 30 odd basis points, I think, rather than the previous 50 plus. Could the Fed be hiking in 2025?
We actually think it's more 2026 that they will actually hike, because the tariffs and tax cuts that the Trump administration introduces will boost inflation going into 2026, and then the Fed will...
So the dot plot's wrong. The dot plot, which says we're going to get to I think off the top of my head, 3.125 in 2027, it's wrong.
Well, we think that you are going to see some further easing, then you're going to see sort of tightening. The reason you see some further easing is there's still some lagged effects from high rates kicking through, because people are coming through, refinancing, and that sort of is a little bit of a headwind to the economy, enough that the Fed, as Powell said, they don't want to see any further softening in the labour market. And that then means that we are going to get 2 cuts, we think, delivered in the first half of the year. So that's why there's a contrasting story that we see in the first half versus the second half. Bullish for the US equities, and then we've got a correction coming in the second half of the year.
Right, you mentioned the refinancing. It's something that is this so-called sword of Damocles hanging over the market. Oh, the US corporate refinancing, we've got to worry about the rollover, we've got to worry about... Well, we started worrying about it in 2023, it didn't transpire. Certainly people start talking about it in 2024. Now they're all saying, hey, it's 2025. That's the year we've got to worry about. Does this wall of money refinancing as a threat to the markets actually exist?
If you're talking about the corporate sector, it's actually multi-year. So it's actually smoothed out. So they should be okay in terms of what their impact is. I'm more referring to refinancing for the US government.
Yeah, that's going to be more interesting for sure. Yeah, and that's why we ended the year, what did we end at? 4.57% yield, when a lot of people thought it should be a three handle. Brilliant, love it. Michael, thank you very much indeed. Great vein of form this year. You've obviously had a very restful New Year's Eve. I tell you what, can we keep you over the break? Because we haven't even mentioned that the other continent, the old one, the one that's becoming an anachronism, a museum piece. I'm talking about my beloved Europe, of course. Is it coming there, or can they do anything about it? Well, we'll discuss that. Coming up on the show, the French president. Yes, he's still the president, despite, I would suggest, ceding a lot of political control in 2024. Emmanuel Macron capping a tumultuous year with an admission. Wow, this is rare. Let's listen to this. An admission that calling the snap elections created more instability for the country. Was that a mea culpa? I don't know. Anyway, we'll bring you all the details from his New Year's address. Plus, Russian gas flows to Europe run dry. Well, they don't, do they? Because they're still importing vast amounts of LNG. But I know what you mean. Run dry through the pipe, anyway, as Ukraine refuses to renew a key transit deal and turns off the taps. We'll look at who it hurts most. And did we mention that Donald Trump is poised to return to the White House? No? OK, well, we should redress that. We're going to focus on the 2025 geopolitical landscape with Tina Fordham from Fordham Global Insight. That's coming up at 7:30 London time. I bet you can't wait for the rest of this show, everyone. Here's one of my big questions of 2025. Do French presidents ever apologise? Charlotte's here. I've got a whole read. I'll do all that in a moment. Hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bonne nouvelle année. Is that what you say?
Bonne année. Yep.
Oh, bonne année. OK. Well, why not nouvelle?
Don't know.
Oh, OK. Good year to you too.
It's just the way it is.
Good year to you too. I won't do the new bit. Do French presidents ever apologise?
Rarely. This is as close as we got,
wrong.
basically.
We are never wrong.
No, but
well, I'm wondering if we've just seen something as rare as hen's teeth. French President Emmanuel Macron has admitted that his decision to hold parliamentary elections, snap ones at that in June, created more divisions than solutions. Macron's address to the nation in his Year's Eve speech. All right, then, New Year's Eve speech, just a week after a poll, showed his popularity has fallen to its lowest level since taking office in 2017. Is it as low as Hollande's was at its low?
I have to compare. I'm not sure. I think Hollande was lower.
He
but
was pretty low,
his popularity has come back, François Hollande.
He's not
back
coming back, is he, François Hollande?
I think he's planning to.
He's not getting off his moped and pottering, because most of the time he spent in the presidency pottering around his moped, popping around to various.
Let's not go there again. Let's not go there again.
I think you'll have to Google that one. I'll get in trouble if I tell you all about that story. Tell us about Macron's New Year's address.
Yeah, but
Year's address.
Year's address.
Bonne année, good year.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying, as close as we got from, not an apology, but an acknowledgement, saying it otherwise, of course, would be kind of a denial of reality after the multiple events that we had, of course, last year. He had 4 prime ministers in just 1 year, so just that just gave you the overall.
I think they beat the Brits. Did we beat the Brits? How many did we have in 1 year? I'm going to Google 2023. How many did we have? I can't remember. Maybe
I don't know,
we had 3.
We had 4.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Mike's here. We had 3. We did.
There we go. So we win.
What did we have? Sunak, Truss, and Boris, was it? Yeah. So I might have. Yeah, it was. Yeah, what's going on?
And so President Macron basically acknowledging in the New Year's wishes to the nation that, of course, the snap election had brought instability to the country.
We're also faced with political instability, which isn't specific to France. We're also seeing it among our German friends, who have just dissolved their assembly. But it legitimately does worry us. I must admit tonight that the dissolution has brought, for the moment, more divisions to the Assembly than solutions for the French. If I decided to dissolve, it was to give you back the floor, to regain clarity and avoid the immobility that was threatening us. But lucidity and humility demand that we recognise right now that this decision has produced more instability than calm. I take full responsibility for that.
And of course, you remember that just before Christmas, Michel Barnier, the Prime Minister, was ousted. François Bayrou was named Prime Minister. He named his government, including Éric Lombard, the new Economy and Finance Minister. He has started a consultation with the different political groups because, of course, in the background, the question is tackling the deficit that is above 6% for 2024, trying to bring down closer to 5%. And so he started again those consultations. He said he has the same target of bringing deficit a little above 5% in the one and only interview he gave to La Tribune du Dimanche a week ago. So we have to wait and see. You have a general policy speech by the Prime Minister on January 14th. So we have the big axis potentially of the budget, which then the negotiations around that and the debates around that will start afterwards. At the moment, they've rolled over the key elements of the 2024 budget until they can vote an actual budget.
Okay,
next year.
and we'll bring Mike Gallagher back in this from Continuing Economics as well. But I just on the first one before we let you go. Two questions. I know for a fact, because I've seen the economists looking at this, if there is a rollover, it's 6% handle, it's not a 5% handle. But so what are the actual chances? So, why, one question two, why can Bayrou be successful where Barnier wasn't? And I think Barnier is an incredibly competent politician, by the way, as much as, a lot of Brexiteers don't like him. He's an incredibly competent politician and negotiator. And what are the actual chances of getting around 5%?
So there's different ways. One, maybe from the different political groups, maybe that they realize that they can't go on toppling governments one after the other, that the reality of the situation means that they need to reach a compromise. So from that side. From the government side, they try to reach out, give some compromise to the far right in particular. This time, they might be turning towards the left-wing bloc, the group of the socialists in particular, in which François Hollande is part, of course. Éric Lombard, the economy minister, has good connections to that political party and to the unions as well. They said they want to do more spending cuts than tax increases, and that is a key one, because some said there was a mistake on the Michel Barnier's proposal for 2025 budget. There were too many tax hikes. In this case, they said they want to do more spending cuts and less tax hikes.
So again, the conversation you and I had in 2019 about the bloated public sector is finally going to get a slight deflation. Thank you very much indeed for that. Mike, here you go. I've said I don't believe a word of the Republicans cutting to 3% the deficit. I don't believe a word of the French going below 5% anytime soon. I mean, I know that's not the immediate target, but they want to get there over a long-term period. Do you concur?
Well, either you're going to get some kind of budget deal that makes small sort of progress, as you've just discussed, or alternatively, you're going to see a movement towards an election in July where you're not going to see sort of a government that's sufficiently sort of interested in actually consolidating the budget. So I think, unfortunately, we're in a situation all through 25 where the French budget deficit is going to be around a 6% sort of trajectory. And that's going to leave France on the defensive in terms of the bond market and a little bit unloved in terms of the equity market.
Is that a good enough reason for our viewers to be as blooming pessimistic about France as it was in 2024? The disparity between the German equity performance and the French equity performance at a blue chip level, and I'll do this off the top of my head here, was circa 21% difference, i.e. the DAX up 19, the CAC down a couple of percent as well. But one thing I noticed, obviously, the DAX, we had horrible domestic economics, we had horrible corporate news, we've got a horrible political situation, but it still put on 19%. Why can't the CAC rally despite all of those problems?
I think it can sort of eventually, but I think a number of things have to happen in European equities this year. So we need the ECB to get down to 2%, which we think is going to happen by June. So, compared to the Fed, we're going to get 4 cuts from the ECB. Then there's the question of Ukraine. We actually think that there's going to be a ceasefire some stage in the second quarter because both sides are exhausted. Both sides want to compromise.
Mike, the Russians are making gains. They're making territorial gains they haven't seen since 2022.
Yeah, but it's still, it's not meaningful. It's not huge gains. So, we think that there will be sort of a movement in that direction. And that's good for European equity sentiment. I think the problem is you've got French politics, you've also got German politics, which are likely to probably get a grand coalition after February's election. But, that's only going to produce modest fiscal stimulus. So things will get better in Europe, but we've also going to have a trade war with the US as well. So it's a very messy year for Europe.
But I'm actually, do you know, more I think about this, and I listen to a lot of really smart people, including yourself as well, I think to myself, Trump plus Musk, on the surface of it, doesn't look great for Europe as well. So certainly Trump doesn't look great for Europe as well. I actually am going to try and take a different view. I think Trump, plus looking at what Musk may or may not do at a government level, certainly what he's doing at a corporate level, is brilliant for Europe. There you go. That's counter-intuitive in many ways. Because I think it shows Europe, if you don't push ahead and do your own kind of revolution, you are going to be a backwater. Back to, as I said, a kind of museum anachronism as well. We've got templates in place. We've got ideas from Draghi. We've got ideas from Letta. We've got ideas from Orchel on a different level. Let's go for it. Let's actually, Europe, stop being the victim here and start being proactive.
You normally need a crisis in Europe to actually galvanise Europe.
We have a crisis.
No,
we're not growing.
No, a proper crisis.
We have a war.
So 2011, 2020 both galvanised European policymakers into actually taking substantive action. You need a big crisis to get a big policy response. I'm afraid for 2025, given the political fractions you've got in France and Germany, which are the two critical countries, it's difficult to actually sort of galvanise large-scale sort of action. You will get some improvement driven by Germany and because of other reasons, but you're not going to see a game changer coming through from that perspective. Yes, European equities can do somewhat better cumulatively by the end of the year, but it's going to be a very choppy year, and it's not going to be an outstanding year.
I've got 30 seconds. Adam's just let me have that. He hasn't really. Give me an honourable note of the FTSE 100. It's been the most uninspiring index to own for a long, long time. Is it going to have its day in the sun?
Probably not, because China is really still sort of struggling to grow properly.
Well, growing at 5%. Xi Jinping just told us the other day, growing at 5%.
Well, it's going to struggle even to grow at 5%, and I think that hurts commodity demand. UK domestic equities will look better because I think the market is underestimating how much the Bank of England is going to cut. We think we're going to do 5 cuts.
Wow, 5 cuts.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabi Lekumete, weekdays on CNBC.